Ok, buenos. Bienvenidos a todos y todas. Soy Paul Gleeson y soy el embajador de Irlanda en Chile. And we're delighted to have you here with us today as part of our series focusing on really interesting Ireland-Chile research collaborations. We're producing these videos in support of the Irish government's Creating Our Future campaign, which is seeking to promote a national and international conversation on research in Ireland, and which is asking people to submit their own ideas for what research in Ireland should explore. The deadline to submit your ideas is the end of November, and you can find out more at www.creatingourfuture.ie. So in today's interview, we'll be exploring the fascinating area of microbiome research, and particularly the link between the gut and our brains. And I'm delighted to be joined today by someone who's really a world expert in this area, Professor John Cryan. John was one of our last visitors to Chile pre-pandemic. He's the Vice President for Innovation and Research at University College Cork, which is one of the most active Irish universities here in Latin America. And John is also a professor and chair at the Department of Anatomy and Neuroscience in UCC. I'm also joined today by Marcela, Julio, Pieper, and Javier Bravo here in Chile. Marcela is an associate professor of biochemistry at the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Valparaíso in Chile, and has strong links with University College Cork. I think completed her postdoctoral research at the university between 2007 and 2011. And I'm also joined by Javier Bravo. Javier is an associate professor of biochemistry at the Pontificia Universidad de Valparaíso in Chile. So thank you all very much for making time for this. I know how busy you all are. Maybe just to get us started, John, and for us lay viewers who don't come to this with any expertise, would you just give us a small introduction as to what is the microbiome? Why do we need to research it, and how could there possibly be a connection with the brain?
Yeah, no, it's well, first of all, thanks, Paul, for reaching out, and it's a real pleasure to be here. The microbiome basically is the trillions of bacteria, viruses, fungi that we have in and on our bodies, and they are really play an important role in shaping our immune system, in programming various other systems within the body, and are basically our friends that we get on the day we're born, and they're with us the whole way through life. And you know what we began to realize probably about 15 years ago, that there was a close link between what was going on in the gut and what was going on in the brain. And indeed, it was work in my lab at the time, led by Marcela and Javier, that was really important in bringing this forward, this concept. Because, you know, in medicine in general, we compartmentalize the body. So if you focus on the brain, you think about everything from the neck upwards. So what the microbiome starts people to think about things in a much more holistic way, and that everything is connected. And this has been an amazing journey. And you know, all we have to do really is, you know, look to our language. We use phrases like gut feelings and gut instincts. We're gutted when we're disappointed. We're gutsy moves when we're brave. So there is really what we're saying now, and our data would support, there is real biology behind these well-known phrases that we have in English. And I'm sure there is equivalent phrases in Spanish too.
Yeah, that's fascinating. We do use those all the time, as if we instinctively had a feeling that connection was there. Marcela, can I ask you about international collaboration in this area? Obviously, you know, Ireland and Chile are 11,000 kilometers apart. You know, it requires work to reach out, to travel, to do research in another country. Why is that important? Why is international collaboration so fundamental in an area like this?
Well, to begin, you don't see things the same way if you have a different cultural background. So that's really nice to bring all these different views together, but also because you don't have the same context. So maybe you have different needs, or your policies in your country are different than others, and so you can all benefit from that. I remember going into John's lab. We were in a lab with plenty of resources, but we were able to bring our maybe our resourcefulness in terms of doing things when you don't have many resources. And what we didn't realize is that it helps you gain more, or you use your time more effectively. So I hope we were able to put that into John's lab, as well as we took a lot, of course, but that's just a small example of how you can bring things that other people don't even realize, because they have a different context economically, culturally, etc. So I hope that's only a small thing that you, and we learned from collaborations with John and other colleagues in Canada and even Israel, I think one of them, that you have to be more, I don't know, courageous maybe, just even if you are not completely sure that things are going to work out, just try, and worst thing that can happen is that they don't, but if you never try. So those are very kind of simple things, but you start realizing when you get this interaction with people that are from a different background than you.
Absolutely, yeah. And in that meshing of kind of research cultures and different approaches and so on. Javier, just in a similar way, will you tell me a little bit about when Ireland first cropped up on your radar, and what it was about the Irish experience and the work that John was doing that kind of particularly pulled you towards Ireland or towards what was happening in Cork?
Oh, well, I think that Ireland came about out of serendipity. By the time I met John, he wasn't in Ireland, he was in Switzerland. But by the time I was finishing my PhD, John had moved into Ireland, into UCC. And that's when I got his invite to be part of his team. And up to that day, Ireland wasn't even in my radar in terms of looking for opportunities to do research abroad after my PhD. I think that up until that point, if I wanted to go abroad, my instinct would have been to the US or maybe somewhere else in Europe, where, I don't know, maybe there won't be too many language barriers. Let's say Spain, for instance. For many finishing PhD students here in Chile, for instance, when they think about Europe, they think mainly in Spain because of language barrier. There's no language barrier in Spain. But when Ireland appeared in the radar, and you started to look into what's going on, I mean, you're looking into universities, not only UCC, but all the other important universities in Ireland, and you start to realize, wow, this is really important, and we're going into a very big university with huge hopes on what we could contribute into from our background, with limitations in our budget. That's Chile is always in science. It's always budget limitations, and every year it advances. We get less money. So collaborations also is important in order only to advance in sciences, but also into reach into the scientific advances that are available elsewhere. And at this moment, in terms of gut-brain axis relationships, microbiome in the research, right? UCC, APC particularly, is leading the way in the world, and having been able to be part of that back in the day. We left Ireland in 2011. But we've been sort of collaborating in between. It's been great. I mean, and it has being able to be part of this revolution that John and Ted Dinan has coined, the psychobiotic revolution. They have a book about it as well. It has been great in terms of establishing this relationship, and establishing that Ireland is there in the map, and it's something we need to look at. And it's not only Europe is not only for our students as well. Europe is not only Spain, France, Germany, the UK perhaps. Well, the UK is out of Europe actually, but when you look at Europe now, our students are looking into Ireland as well, and not only because we encourage them to look for their research that it's being done at UCC, at APC, by John's lab, but also to look for new horizons where to go and do the research they want to. And so far it's been so good. We've been able to send a few of our students that are currently in John's lab, people that we've trained in our lab. And I think it's also been successful for them and also for John's lab as well. So it's a
win-win. Yeah,
it's a good situation for both of us.
John, can I come to you? I mean, I suppose there's never been a couple of years when people are thinking as much maybe about their bodies over the last couple of years, when, you know, we've all been saturated with news coverage telling us about different symptoms and different things to look out for and so on. And, you know, even aside from the immediate dangers that COVID has presented for a lot of people, around long COVID as well, and a lot of effects that we're probably only just starting to understand as well. Can I ask how the pandemic has had an impact on either on your work or on international collaborations generally? I mean, are things going to shift around as a result of this?
Well, definitely. I think immediately it has changed international collaboration because people couldn't travel, and so it made it more tricky. And we had we had hoped some people would visit from Javier's lab over to our team, and that was put on hold and all that. But from a thematic point of view, what it's doing is, well, first of all, people are, viruses are microbes, so people are now very aware of what microbes do, and that microbes can be quite powerful, and not always negatively, but it's got people very aware of their immune system, and understanding what shapes their immune system, and the microbiome is really important to that. The other thing we see is people got more interested in their diet and in what they eat and cook, and are really returning to overall approaches for general well-being. And what we're trying to understand is the biology of that. And then also in relation to chronic stress, the stress, the New York Times used a term called languishing, that we're all a bit languishing. And I see the gut-brain axis as playing a key role in how we deal with stress. And that's work that Javier and Marcela are also working on in Chile to try and understand that, the effects of stress on the brain, but also on the gut and overall. And then we're only scratching the surface yet about long COVID, because why do some people get these symptoms? What is it about them that makes them susceptible? And our gut feeling is that the microbiome could be playing a role in inter-individual effects, especially the fogginess, the cognitive changes that people report in long COVID and the chronic stress. So I definitely think the pandemic has highlighted this very much. The other thing is that during the pandemic, people are living in social structures that are quite different. And we also find that the microbiome is shaping a lot of these social structures. And also because of the increased cleanliness, we're living in a much more hygienic world, which is, it's maybe not always beneficial to the microbes if you keep killing them all the time. So only time will tell, and it'll take more collaboration and more international collaboration to understand how this is impacting in different places.
It shows you're all at the cutting edge of something that so many people are fascinated with now, and that's never been higher up the agenda. I have one last question for each of you, and I might come to you first on this, Marcela. The Creating Our Future campaign that I spoke about earlier, that's trying to identify with public health at home and with our Irish diaspora around the world, ideas for the future of Irish research. Could I ask if you could give one piece of advice to policymakers in your country, so for instance here in Chile, on research in the country where you're working, what would that be? What would be the one piece of advice if you could advise civil servants about research and research collaborations?
Okay, I'm thinking something that is something that I thought was more important in a country with limited resources for research. I thought when I was younger that you should focus all your research funding on applied science. So anything that has to do with technology and more short-term investments, if you want. But with time, I understood that it kinds of kill people likeness of science. because sometimes you just want to wonder, why does this happen? What's the reason for this? So maybe my advice would be to still keep some of the research funds for very, very basic science, and not only the more technology driven science, if you know what I mean. I love doing science just for the sake of it, not because it's going to end in a project that is useful for human health, etc. I mean, that's important, of course, but the passion about science should be also funded, not only the applications of science. So that will be like a dream for me.
Very good. And Javier, the same question to you. If you could advise policymakers on, changing something in the area of research.
In the area of research, I mean, first thing that we need to talk here in Chile is about the budget. I mean, Chile is not a very wealthy country, but there are resources we can dig into and drive them into research, basic and applied research, and thus trying to promote. I mean, there's an upcoming election here in Chile, so we scientists are listening to all the proposals that all the candidates have, not only for presidency but also for Congress. And there are some candidates that advocate for a higher funding in science and education. Not only science has to be funded, but also has to be the basic for the science comes from the people, and the people needs to be educated in a proper way. So as long as you have a base of very enthusiastic children that would like to go into science, and then have them go into universities and carry out these sciences with a good amount of resources. I mean, there is a huge potential here in Chile in terms of the brain capacity that we have. As Marcela mentioned earlier, we have to do top research, try to compete with our collaborators all over the world without this with this limited amount of monetary resources, and we have to come into creating new ideas on how to overcome these deficiencies. That has created that our Chilean scientists are very quick in trying to solve these problems, and that shows that we have this brain capacity to do it. So we need more funding, but not only funding for us to do science, but also funding to do collaborations. Collaborations also is key. In my own experience, collaboration, not only in John's lab, the key paper that we launched in 2011 was a collaboration between UCC and McMaster University in Canada, and it's still one of the highest cited papers from John's lab. I mean, it's that really showed me that collaboration, not only within one nation but across borders, is really, really important to promote sciences, because after all, I mean, the knowledge that we generate as scientists is not only going to be for our own ego, but is also for humankind. So that's the aim that we have to put when it comes to policy making, I think.
Very good. And John, the same question to you finally, if you'd advice for research policymakers in Ireland.
Yeah, in Ireland, I think it's following on from what Javier was saying. I think we do need to look outside of Ireland and foster collaborations, and especially in countries like Chile, where there's different philosophies around science. And we learn from each other, and to allow to enable these collaborations to occur in a fluid way. A lot of our funding in Ireland is very restricted to be within the country, and we don't like money going outside. But it's about exchanging ideas and knowledge transfer. I mean, Chilean scientists are they think much more philosophical than Irish scientists by training, just as in general has been my view, and I think that enriches both countries countries and so much. And we have to remember that Ireland, in the up until about 2000, there wasn't an awful lot of money going into research either. And so I grew up, you know, I trained as a scientist in the 1990s, where we did only for collaborative projects abroad. You know, we would not have that ability to prosper overall. And so I would have more of short-term stays of foreign scientists at all levels, and then trying to keep, it's not about bringing people into science, but it's about keeping people in science and making sure that they have a lifelong career in creativity and curiosity in science.
Well, listen, John, thank you, and thank you all. That's a brilliant note to leave it on. There's a for Marcela and Javier, I'm sure when you were in Ireland, people were quoting to you this poem in the Irish language about Hánig Lung ó Valparaíso. Everybody in Ireland of a certain vintage studied this poem in school about a ship going to Valparaiso. I'm sure when you were in Cork, people were quoting this to you from time to time. And I think whoever, you know, when that was written or studied even, I think the very idea that there would be this kind of exciting collaboration between Valparaiso and Cork in Ireland, two port cities, in an area as innovative and new and important as microbiome research and the links between our guts and our brains, it would have been beyond the wildest realm. So just to say thank you for everything you're doing, all the terrific work, and also for making the time today to discuss this exciting Ireland-Chile research collaboration. So thank you all.
Cheers, Paul. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for this invitation.
Thanks.